Hello, and welcome to Grade.com Talks With. Today, we're talking with Karen Guillory, Outreach Coordinator at Environmental Law Alliance Worldwide, an organization who is helping communities speak out for clean air, clean water, and a healthy planet. And if you are new to our podcast, please press subscribe button either on YouTube or your podcast app, because today we're going to learn about an organization that is a global alliance of attorneys, scientists, and other advocates collaborating across borders to build a sustainable, just future. Hello, Karen. Welcome to Grade.com Talks. We're excited to have you here.
Hi, Kareem. Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. Could you please describe Environmental Law Alliance Worldwide for someone who is not familiar with your work?
Absolutely. So you gave a great overview of our mission, but just to give a little bit of the history is helpful in knowing how we formed and how we collaborate with advocates around the world. So ELAW started, we're actually celebrating our 30th year this year. We started 30 years ago after advocates from 10 countries were collaborating at a public interest environmental law conference at the University of Oregon School of Law. And as they talked and met each other at this conference, they realized that their communities in their countries where they're working were facing similar environmental challenges. And often they were challenging the same multinational corporations using the same strategies. So they realized that if they could share strategies and legal and scientific information, they could be much more effective in their work to defend communities and ecosystems. We've now, over 30 years, mostly organically through building relationships, have, like I said, partners in more than 80 countries now collaborate through ELAW to gain the legal, scientific, and organizational support that they need to challenge corporate abuses and strengthen and enforce environmental protections.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's wonderful. Something that started 30 years ago as a collaboration of 10 members from 10 different countries who saw similar issues happening in their communities and collaborated together. And 30 years from there, now you have a collaboration, a community of members from 80 different countries who are working towards environmental issues, who are in the front end and are fighting for the just and sustainable future. So that's a wonderful story. And the fact your organization is working towards solving some of the most pressing climate change issues is very wonderful. As your strategy is finding strong lawyers who are committed to protecting the environment in their home countries, could you please tell us how do you find such lawyers and what are some of the key challenges and issues that you are working together with those lawyers?
Yeah. I think a lot of people find us. We have a wide array of legal resources on our website, and often colleagues are introducing their other colleagues within their organizations or across the country. So we're very relationship based. It's often a word of mouth and an introduction. We host an annual meeting each year. And often we're getting to know both new and returning partners through this gathering that we hold annually. But yeah, it's really focused on relationship and getting to know people. We'll sometimes host fellows in Eugene, and people will visit for that same public interest environmental law conference. So it's many building those actions. And some of the main issues, so just to give a story of how someone calls on ELAW, often if a community finds out that a coal plant, for example, has been planned to be sited nearby, they organize to challenge it either through informal community groups or through existing NGOs. And often they are challenging it through many different ways, advocacy very much included, but often through legal means as well. And their lawyers call on ELAW for legal and scientific support in those cases. These advocates who are representing communities are often up against powerful, really well-funded interests that profit from exploiting people and ecosystems. They might be working in relative isolation with small groups or NGOs that might not have the scientific expertise on staff to be able to really point out all the potential damages from a proposed project. And they often learn about the projects that developers are trying to push through really quickly with, on the developer side, they might try to push it through with little or no public consultation. So they know that they can call on ELAW for a really quick turnaround of a specific scientific critique of the proposed projects, maybe help developing environmental monitoring systems to, if it's something that's already in the works or some stage of it has already been built, that they can gather evidence to prove damage to a watershed or air quality. Our scientists provide expert testimony about the impacts to communities and ecosystems and are often recommending cleaner alternatives. In our work with all of our partners, ELAW very much stays in the background and follows the lead of our local partner. We believe that the local advocate working in their community knows best how to prioritize the environmental issues that are most important for the people they work with. Some of the focus areas that there are some definitely common themes that we collaborate most often with partners on. Some of those main focus areas are challenging fossil fuel development, stopping extractive industry abuses, so other kinds of mining, protecting coastal and marine ecosystems, reining in plastic pollution has become a newer body of work, and improving the security of land and environmental defenders.
Mm-hmm. Wow, the fact that you were able to build a trusted community, a trusted network. So the way you expand, the way community members come to you is mentioned by you is through the network, through word of mouth. So over the years, you've built the trust, you've built a strong foundation for other partners to come and get, as you mentioned, a quick turnaround for the most pressing challenges that they are facing. And the fact that you were able to build that is wonderful. And as you mentioned, what I really enjoy is that you mentioned that you put the actual community members, the actual lawyers that are working in their communities in the front line, and you are at the back supporting them with necessary guidelines, with necessary information, with necessary scientific research, and based on the data, based on the analysis that you provide, then lawyers, then the community action, community members can take action and lead the fight against, as mentioned by you, the corporation and or the other institutions that are diminishing the climate in general. So that's wonderful to see that you are able to achieve that. And the fact that you are covering the 4 or 5 different main key challenges and are providing help in those areas is wonderful. One of the areas that you mentioned is the plastic pollution and plastic reduction. Could you please provide a case that you have been working on recently, or just in general describe how that research and how that scientific research is helping other communities across the globe?
Absolutely. So ELAW is a core member of the Break Free from Plastic movement. Mm-hmm. And that movement is really working to challenge plastic from when it's extracted, often starts the life cycle as a fossil fuel, all the way to eventual disposal, often into the oceans. We know that about 40% of plastic produced is single use. It's just used one time, and very, very little of that is being recycled. And Break Free from Plastic is working to shift the narrative of that's a problem of poor management, to really understanding that this is inherently unmanageable waste that some companies are profiting off of at the expense of our environment. Often, a lot of the plastic waste is being exported from the global north and dumped in the global south. So we are working with a lot of countries. One specific example In Bangladesh, we recently worked with the Bangladesh Environmental Law Association and have helped them pass bans of several different varieties of plastic. So we're working on, banning the plastic outright. We've also recently launched a database that's collecting laws relating and regulating to plastic from around the world to help partners analyze what's already been passed, what's been successful, what can we learn from that's maybe been passed, but the enforcement is lacking. So really a collective learning database where we can strengthen laws that exist, pass new bans, and enforce ones that are maybe on the books but aren't being enforced. And beyond just the kind of passing the bans, we're working to extend, it's called extended producer responsibility is really what we're working towards, where if the company is profiting from selling a product in a container, that is their responsibility. They produced it, they're profiting off of it. They don't get to pass off the responsibility to the consumer or the community. So we're really hoping through a lot of this collective work together to end this single-use plastic proliferation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, break free plastic movement is very important movement, and the case of Bangladesh that your organization has worked on is a great example of how the solution can be implemented. And what I really like about your approach, you mentioned you have a database, so you're not just providing the telling to ban, but also providing alternative solutions that can be implemented. So that's there is when organization or communities or governments in general see the proposals, they can see that, actually once we banned it, there is another solution that is more sustainable, that is more ecologically friendly and more long-term thinking wise. So that's very important to see that. The second issue that you mentioned that you are working on is with the fossil fuel industry and the damage that they are causing to environment. Could you please describe some of your recent works in that area and examples of your research?
Yeah, so really it's in the US, there's been a quite successful effort to kill coal. That's not the case in much of the world. There's still many, many plans for expanding coal mining and coal plants. And it's just the most climate damaging, dirtiest fuel that we could possibly be using. So we have historically and are currently still doing a lot of work to challenge those coal plants and mines before they're even authorized, because that would just lock us into, if the life of a coal plant might be 30 years, that locks that country into coal. They're not able to meet any of their international targets. One really big win last year, actually, we celebrated a major victory against coal with the final defeat of the proposed Tabametsi coal-fired power station in South Africa. It would have been one of the most greenhouse gas intensive coal-fired power stations in the world, and would have had disastrous health and environmental impacts to the nearby communities. ELAW collaborated for many years. Various cases were brought. We collaborated with partners at the Center for Environmental Rights, Africa, and provided a critical review of the power company's climate impact assessment, pointed out the flaws in the company's emissions license and environmental authorization. The whole battle was hailed as South Africa's first climate case. And so that individual case was a really big success, and it also set a really important precedent that climate impacts now have to be considered when authorizing future development plans.
Mm-hmm. What What you mentioned, I never realized that once the coal plant is already in place, so it's already 30 years of the usual life cycle, 30 years of the damage, 30 years of the damage to the community that the plant is built around. So the fact that your organization is trying and very successfully in the case of South Africa to prevent the building from happening rather than the post factum where the coal mines are there. So the preventive work that you are doing is helping save much resources, is helping to save environment in general. So that's very wonderful to see that you are working pre-factum rather than just post-factum. And you mentioned that although US has been successful in the transition from the coal to other sources of energy, there's still many communities across the globe that depend on the coal, but there are different alternative solutions that can be implemented. And the fact that there are organizations such as yours who are providing tools, who are providing necessary information and guidelines on how to do the shift is very wonderful. If we talked about some of the key issues that your organization is together with other lawyers across the globe, 80 countries are working on, but can we look at what are some challenges in terms of implementation of those strategies, implementation of the research that you have done that the lawyers face in when they are taking action in terms of fighting with corporates or the governments in place?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, every day, environmental and human rights defenders are harassed, threatened, and attacked because of their work protecting ecosystems, air, water, land rights. Sometimes our partners are specifically targeted because they're the lawyers that represent a whole community. So they're an individual that's amplifying the voices of many, and that makes them a target. One example that ELAW knows well and was very closely involved with, one of our partners, Mexican attorney Eduardo Mosquera Sanchez, was detained for 10 months on false charges after he represented an indigenous community challenging an illegal mining operation. When one of our partners is jailed, as was the case, we find out what they need to defend themselves and how we can help. In Eduardo's case, we drew media attention, got the embassy involved, and wrote letters to the court until he was freed. Since then, it continues, although he is luckily still able to do his work, but the organization that he works for and the environmental activists that he represents have repeatedly been harassed and threatened. In response to this increasing frequency and severity of attacks on defenders, ELAW is working to build skills in our network and fighting back case by case, country by country. When our partners are attacked or threatened, they call on us and we provide the support they need. In addition, ELAW has joined with other international organizations to create the Alliance for Land, Indigenous, and Environmental Defenders. Acronym is ALLIED. ALLIED brings together local, national, and international organizations with individual defenders to fight these accelerating attacks and to collectively learn together how we can, as a wide group working on these issues and facing the same threats, better protect defenders and the rights of communities.
It's very unfortunate that the defenders, environmental defenders, lawyers are threatened, are put into wrongful action because of their activism. And it's very sad. Yet the fact that your organization is working towards case-by-case solution and being advocates for those lawyers who are being threatened, who are putting in the jail for wrongful reasons, and driving the media attention in the example of the Mexican attorney that you mentioned, and also building an alliance and working with different organizations to form an alliance to protect the lawyers defenders, to protect the defenders, environmental defenders, is very important, because what they are doing is very important, and they need support as well. They need protection, and that one form of that protection can be provided through the network of environmental law alliance worldwide, and the other alliances formed together with ELAW in general. How do you see your organization making impact and changing shift in the upcoming 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that more people around the world are experiencing the impacts of the climate crisis and are suffering due to the damage that has been done to the ecosystems that sustain us. The good news is this is causing more people to step forward and take action. All around the world, communities are demanding an end to environmental abuses, an end to the era of fossil fuels, and leading a just transition to a balanced relationship with the natural world. As the world is becoming more connected, also, we're helping make it harder for corporations to just operate with impunity wherever has the fewest environmental and human rights protections. ELAW in this way works to level the playing field and share successful strategies so that the communities fighting these same battles around the world can hold bad actors accountable for their violation of environmental and human rights.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. As the number of activists increases, the research, the back end for the backend support is very important, and your organization will be continue doing it, but not in terms of, as you in 30 years from 10 you reached of the goal of 80 countries now. Hopefully in the 5 to 10 years your outreach will be, and you will be present and helping lawyers and communities not only in 80 but more countries across the globe. If someone would like to support ELAW, how can they do so?
Oh, thank you for asking. To support ELAW's work, you can go to www.elaw.org/give. We really appreciate gifts of any sizes. Thank you.
Wonderful. The link to the ELAW's website will be provided in the description. So you viewing and listening can go to the website and familiarize yourself with the wonderful work Karen and the team at Environmental Law Alliance Worldwide is doing, and support their mission. Thank you so much, Karen. It was wonderful to get to know you, and very impactful work that your organization is doing.
Thank you.
For you listening, if you enjoyed this conversation, please press like and share button, because this will show the YouTube and podcast algorithms that this conversation is important, that we need to collaborate across borders to build a sustainable, just future. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.